All right, good evening and welcome to the December 21st, 2021 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Stephen Spur and I am Chairman of the Summit Zoning Board. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For the benefit of the interested public, this meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page and also broadcast to Summit's government channel, which is Comcast Channel 34 and Verizon Channel 30. In close consultation with the City Clerk's Office, as well as careful consideration of relevant CDC and NJDOH guidance, the following precautions have been adopted to protect board members, professionals, city staff, applicants, members of the interested public, and others in consideration of ongoing public health concerns. First, all meeting attendees are required to wear a face mask regardless of vaccination status unless speaking as part of the formal proceedings. Second, social distancing is encouraged wherever practical. Third, face masks and hand sanitizers are available for attendees to use at the meeting room entrance. And finally, regular and rigorous cleaning of the facilities have been conducted by city staff. Please note the fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room where you entered. The city has a listening system to assist the hearing impaired. If anyone needs hearing assistance, please obtain the system at the dais and return it thereafter. Ron Mondello, who will be serving as the zoning board's attorney this evening. He will advise board members on matters of law and is the key interface with an applicant's attorney. Mr. Mondello will not vote on the applications. Chris Nicola is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. Mr. Nicola works with the applicants on preparing their applications, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Mr. Nicola also does not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Some applications require 5 affirmative votes to be approved. You'll be told which majority will be required before we begin our deliberations. Mr. Nicola, will you please call the roll of members?
Sure. Chairman Spur?
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Newell?
Here.
Mr. Yuko is excused. Mr. Steiner? Mr. Mullen is,
Delayed.
we're expecting.
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein?
Here.
Mr. Millay?
Here.
Mr. Loikis is excused. Ms. Toth?
Here.
Ms. Sager?
Here.
And Dr. Levine is excused. You have a quorum. You can proceed.
We generally hear the cases in the order they are listed on the agenda. We try to have each hearing last no more than 30 minutes, but we do understand that some cases are too complex to be heard within that time frame. Each hearing begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the variances that are required. We then hear from any expert witnesses the applicant may have to help explain the application and why their variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and board professionals have completed their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think about this case. That opportunity comes at the end of the hearing. Before you ask your questions, please clearly state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address. It is important that our court reporter be able to keep a clear and accurate public record. Stenography for this meeting is being conducted over the video system, so we ask also you carefully speak into the microphones so we can capture your audio. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak, and at that time you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. Then the public hearing is closed, and we enter into executive session where board members discuss the case and vote. You'll be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in our discussion. Most applications are heard and decided in the same evening. If a case requires additional information or testimony that cannot be presented tonight, we will carry your case to another date and it will not be decided during this meeting. Krista Anderson, the city's zoning officer, has asked that I remind all applicants that they must carefully read the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and to pay particular attention to the conditions contained in the resolution. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, as will cause extra work for city zoning staff. The resolution documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. When I call your name, please come up to the podium, tell me how many witnesses you have, and whether you think you can complete your case within 30 minutes. Now we'll note for the record that David Mullen has joined us on the dais. Welcome, Mr. Mullen. First, and we can just we can address this just from the dais, is Beacon Unitarian 4 Waldron Avenue. So, Chris, can you just quickly summarize Mr. Maynard's communications with the board?
Yeah, so Mr. Maynard has requested an adjournment. Mr. Mandello can kind of explain more of the logistics for the time of period, but he has waived all applicable times for the board to act, and my understanding is that they're carrying it to a date definite.
Yeah, fairly unusual, but they are asking that the matter be carried to a date that they have not decided on, but obviously, number one, they're waiving all of the time periods to decide the case, and more importantly, they have agreed to renotice residents within 200 feet and publish again, so that everybody understands when this application, if and when the application comes back before this board.
Excellent. Do you want a roll call vote on this, Chris, or?
Yeah, I think we should move it and get a second as
We
well.
have a motion to carry this to a date to be determined. The applicant, again, has waived the time with which the board has to act, and will notice as appropriate when we do finally hear this case again.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I mean, I don't remember when they originally filed this application.
Long ago.
Yeah, this is a while ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at what point do we just say, no, we are dropping this, and you have to just file an entirely new application?
So, may I, Mr. Chairman? So I did speak to Andy about this, because I did think it was somewhat unusual, and I had posed that very question. I said, why not just simply have the board make a motion to dismiss without prejudice?
Right.
And I'm not the board attorney, so he wasn't comfortable doing that. He would like to proceed this way, but of course, that's up to the board.
But couldn't we put some end date on it so that, personally, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I don't like just having it hanging out there without an end date, and especially because this has been carried like numerous times and we've already heard it. I think it's been before the board a couple of times.
The growing concern for the board, let alone the public, is that we don't recall the facts of the case and won't be able to make, then this is a complicated case to be heard with both objecting testimony and the applicant.
Yeah.
So it's our hope through conversation with Roger Maynard, who's the applicant's attorney, that by the spring, a decision will be made as to whether how to proceed with the case. Ideally, because of the controversy around the case, we wouldn't want to vote on it necessarily. It is a complicated case with strong opposition, as well as a compelling case by the applicant. But if the applicant doesn't plan to proceed with the changes, the construction that they've proposed, then ideally we wouldn't vote on it. They would withdraw it, and we would hear likely another case by another applicant who would use that site moving forward. So I think what Chris and Andy and I are trying to work towards is, March, April time horizon, to try to get a commitment one way or the other, because it would have likely come up 2 years maybe at that point.
Oh, yeah,
It's been a long time since
We
we've
heard the
been working
initial
with
testimony in person.
We did?
Yeah, I remember it.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So could we put, like, if they don't do something within 2 years of the initial application, that the initial application is dismissed without prejudice?
I would want to go back to Roger and just talk about that and confirm it first. What he's asked us to do is, again, carry it to a date to be determined, waiving the time with which board is act, and that the notice is particularly important. I cannot imagine returning this case without notice, just considering the residential turnover in Summit. How many of those homeowners are no longer there? How many are new and need to learn about this application? So I thank you for raising that concern. It's certainly something that we've shared. They're entitled to a decision by the board, but I think what we're trying to avoid is an unnecessary opinion or finding of the board because of the controversy of the case. So, yes, I will hopefully return that to the dais, that question early in the year. When you're watching from home on YouTube, you can see how it all turns out. So do we have a motion to carry the case to a date to be determined?
So moved.
Thank you, Diane. The second?
Second.
Thank you, Liz. We'll roll call, Chris?
Sure, Chairman Spur,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner? You recused? Oh, sorry. Thank you, Joe. Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
I'm recused.
Oh, thank you. And Ms. Sager?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. We'll keep everyone updated on Beacon Unitarian 4 Waldron Avenue. Just again, to quickly review, The applicants we will hear this evening, I'd ask Nicholas Mary Jo Canone of 4 Iris Road just to quickly come up. Just want to hear, or your attorney, if you're here with counsel.
Good evening.
James Weber of Dempsey, and Sheehan, on behalf of Nick and Mary Jo Canone, we have 3 witnesses.
3 witnesses this evening. Okay, thank you, Mr. Weber.
Are
We're
you
just going to
calling
quickly
that- oh.
review, the applicants this evening. And next on the agenda will be Scott and Elizabeth Ryan, 131 Mountain Avenue. Hello, just want to.
Elizabeth Ryan.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Scott Ryan.
Hi, Scott. Do you have an attorney or any witnesses with you this evening? Nope?
One witness.
Yep, one witness.
okay,
yes.
yeah,
She's going to do all the work for you, or at least I hope, so. But no, that's wonderful. So just Ms. Bornerway with you this evening. You can grab a seat, we'll hear you second on the agenda. One witness, applicants. Next, third will be Michael and Maria Tapia, 20 Karen Way. Hello, Mr. Tapia, I assume?
Yes,
Hello. Any witnesses with you this evening?
I do not,
Or-
just one,
Just as your architect, I
Yes,
presume? All
yes.
right, wonderful. We'll hear you third this evening then. Thank you.
thank you.
And finally, Keelan Dunn, 135 Rotary Drive. Architect.
Hi, Keelan Dunn, I have one witness.
One witness. Wonderful. Okay, we'll hear you last, so get comfortable. Thank you. All right, then let's return to the top of the order for Iris Road. Mr. Weber, you have the honors.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I just read an email from Mr. Ball, and I need to recuse myself.
Okay, all right. So we'll note on the record that Ms. Sager is recusing from 4 Iris Road.
Okay.
And, Mr. Chairman, I'd simply note for the record, I did speak to the board secretary, and the board is in receipt of notices to residents within 200 feet and the notice of publication. Therefore, jurisdiction is vested in the zoning board to hear this case, and if council could enter his appearance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and I appreciate on behalf of the Canones, the board members coming out and continuing their duty beyond the call of duty in serving the city of Summit, and especially coming out during this holiday week to see these applications. This is very important to the Canones since this is their home that's currently under construction, and we're trying to get it to the point where they can continue with that and be able to occupy their house in all due time. This is the second time that this application has been before the board. The board had heard this application in October 2020, 1 year ago, and they approved it by resolution November 2020. During that period of time after the approval, construction began on the property. The board had granted a variance for a side yard setback of, no, they didn't need a side yard setback, but was proposed was 8.7 feet with a 23.6% building coverage and with a minor setback for the side landing into that required side yard. During the course of construction, however, as Krista Anderson has put so succinctly in her report, the house was as close to demolished as you can imagine. As a result, the standing of the board's approval was lost. As a result, a stop work order has been placed on the property, and this occurred in and around August or July of this year. An application was filed immediately to bring this back to the board in August, and the application, as Krista has indicated, reflects the same floor plan as this board approved 1 year ago. However, instead of having on the right side of the property a side yard setback of 8 feet 7 inches, it's 8 feet, which is compliant with your ordinance. The stoop, however, the ordinance allows you to encroach into the side yard approximately 3 feet, which would provide a 5-foot setback. So what they're proposing is a 4-foot side porch, which is an encroachment of 4 feet. That side porch is approximately 29 square feet, and it's what provides the access from the garage, which does not otherwise have interior access to the house, working with an existing structure. They have to go outside and then back into the house through this side porch. So the building coverage remains the same as the board approved. Building coverage is permitted at 20%, and I believe that they are at 23.6%. There's also one additional variance that came up with the adoption of the new DRO. The new DRO requires an interior parking space to be at least 20 feet long. They're at 19 feet, 2 inches. So its interior will have no effect, and they believe that working with the existing conditions of the house, this is something that speaks of its own inhibition because of the existing lawful structure. I have Nick Canone to appear, be sworn in, to give testimony in this matter. I'm available to answer any questions. And then I would call Bill Hollows to talk about an interesting development on Iris Road with regard to the ability to perk the dry well. So a lot of work has gone on with this property, and there is some good news with regard to that area.
Before we proceed, I'll offer, of course, the board the opportunity to ask any questions of Mr. Weber. And then I'd ask, are there any members of the interested public that are here with regard to this application? So we know, give you an opportunity to ask questions, to comment when appropriate, aside from the applicants yourself and the witnesses. Okay, we'll just note for the record that at this moment, there doesn't appear to be any other members of the interested public. Mr. Weber, we're going to hear first from the Canones.
One of the homeowners, yes,
Excellent.
Mr. Chairman.
Wonderful.
I would ask that Nick Canone be called to the stand, be sworn in, to give testimony in this matter.
Good evening, sir. Welcome. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name, give the board your address.
My name is Nicholas Canone. The last name spelled C-A-N-N-O-N-E. And my wife and I reside at 4 Iris Road in Summit.
Your witness, Counselor.
Thank you, Ms. Ron.
That works.
Mr. Canone, you brought an application before this board to improve the property at 4 Iris Road, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you've heard me recite, and you've had the opportunity to review the report of Krista Anderson, which recites the history that this was previously approved by this board, but then during the course of construction, a stop work order had to be issued because of the mistakes in connection with the construction. Is that an accurate statement?
That is, yes.
And you've heard me describe that the floor plan, as recited in Krista Anderson's report, is consistent with what the board approved a year ago. Is that correct as well?
That is correct, yes.
And you've retained the services of Karen Caleb as the architect in connection with this matter. And she was the same architect who designed this last year, correct?
That is correct.
And you've retained William Hollows of Murphy and Hollows as your civil engineer.
That is correct.
And you've had an opportunity to review the administrative comments that have been provided by the board's consultants with regard to this application.
I have, yes.
And subject to your expert conditions or explanations, do you agree to be bound by those statements?
I do, yes.
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. All right. Any questions from members of the board for the applicant? Understanding we're going to hear from Mr. Hollows. Good news about perk tests on Iris. I never thought I'd see the day. All right, not seeing any questions from the board. Again, if there's any members of the interested public that are here, I haven't seen any change to the room. We'd welcome you a chance to offer any questions. Mr. Dower, I assume you're going to hold your fire? All right, fair enough. Thank you very much, Mr. Cano.
Thank you.
I
All right.
would ask that William Hollows of Murphy and Hollows be called to the stand to give testimony in this matter. If I can, Mr. Chairman, is he going to be able to be heard from over there, away from the microphone?
You can angle perhaps that microphone, and if you can try that, yeah. Give it a tap on the mic, maybe, just to make sure. Yep, okay. We'll improvise. If you need to remove your mask, Mr. Hollows, for enunciation, you're welcome to.
Good evening, sir. If you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name, give us your office address.
William Hollows, Hollows. My address is 192 Central Avenue, Sterling, New Jersey.
Mr. Chairman, has Mr. Hollows been qualified as an expert in the field of?
Civil engineering.
Thank you.
He has. He's a repeat offender here at the board. We welcome him back.
And if I can, and Ron, he also acts as a professional planner. And just to fill out the file, I will be asking him for his opinion as a professional planner at the conclusion of the civil engineering testimony. That's acceptable.
Was he grandfathered in, or did he go through the planning process?
I believe grandfather.
There you go, that works for me.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
okay.
That's acceptable.
It's the gray hair, right?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hollis.
Mr. Hollows, you're familiar with the application that's pending before the board?
Yes, I worked on it for this application and the previous application. I
And
think
you're
the previous
familiar,
application was a Zoom meeting, and I worked on it first.
now, you've had the opportunity to review the report of Mr. Dewar
I
with
have,
regard to the stormwater and management,
yes.
and I have alluded to the fact that you have performed a perk test. Can you describe for the board what a perk test is and what the findings were with regard to the property?
Certainly. Just to go one step back here. Originally, the plan approved in 2020 had a soil log or a perk test or a dry well in the front yard. What we had done is, Mr. Knowles had hired someone that I suggested who does a lot of the soil logs and perk tests and permeability testing of the soil to do this because I knew it was a troublesome area. And was looking at their expertise to do this. And at the time, I suggested them to bring a little larger machine so that actually could go deeper than what most backhoes can go, which is about 10 feet. And they had a machine that could go up down to 14 feet. And what transpired was that they did a soil log in the front yard, which was acceptable, not great, but acceptable. But when they went to the rear yard, they actually got down deeper and they got into a sandy material. And we've designed, and it actually was approved at the previous application, because after the approval, we've gone back to do the grading plan for the building permit and had the soil log and had spoken to, at the time, Lori Toth, and we had put the dry well in the size that we had designed for the original application, but it sits on 4 feet of gravel now. So we're down into that sandy material. We have actually a little more storage volume. So we feel very confident that this dry well will work because really just a little extra work and trying to get a little bit deeper and got into that sand.
Will this result in an improvement of the stormwater management on the site?
Yes, we had designed for the increase in impervious coverage from the new house as opposed to the original house that was on the property.
I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman, but we turn them over to the board or to Mr. Dewar to follow up with any questions.
You're up first,
I
Mr.
really
Mayor.
don't have any questions. Mr. Hobbs did share the results of the percolation test. So it pretty much is standard in any plan review, even, you know, the board approves it with a seepage pit in a certain location. If they find out subsequent to the meeting that they have, that the perk test is not conducive to having soil, having a dry well in a certain location, it's, a lot of times it is moved, which is exactly the case what happened here. So this will be a benefit to the site and probably to the neighborhood as well.
And then, Mr. Weber, we typically would condition these applications on acceptance of the engineering letter. Is that acceptable to you and the applicant?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman. Now, Mr. Hollows, I had also indicated that you have expertise as professional planner.
That's correct.
Now, I've recited the variances that are pending before the board in connection with this application. Do you agree with those?
Yes, they're C variances.
And I had indicated was a 23.6, where 20% is permitted. It's actually 22.6.
22.6 is the correct.
So you had corrected me with regard to that representation. Do you find that the benefits to be gained by this application will substantially outweigh any detriment?
I do, and this home, the other home was in poor condition when they started the renovation on it, and this is going to be basically a remodeled, almost a new home as it takes place. That's kind of why we're here before you. And it's a little bit larger and it kind of fits the needs of most families today would look for.
I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman, with regard to either civil engineering or planning.
Sure. Before we move to the board questions, I believe this colorized rendering is not included in the board packet, so we would
It is
just...
not in the board, but it is the same drawing you have as drawing number 2. It's just been colorized.
And just for completeness, we would mark it as Exhibit A1?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Excellent. Any questions from members of the board regarding engineering or planning testimony? Okay. Anything, Claire? You're deep in thought over there, I see you.
No.
Okay, something else, all right. Then I just ask again if there's any members of the interested public here. with regard to this testimony? Okay. Mr. Weber, we welcome your next witness.
Mr. Chairman, we have Karen Califf, the architect. If I would offer whether or not the board has any questions of Ms. Califf with regard to the plan that's presented. Again, this is a rendition of the plan that was presented and approved by the board a year ago.
And perhaps before we do entertain that question, you can answer regarding the changes really that were, just to reiterate this from your prior comments, the changes we're hearing really is a technical reduction in the building coverage just because of a typo, frankly, in the earlier resolution.
Correct.
Secondarily, I would characterize as a de minimis encroachment in the side yard, that 4 feet as opposed to the 5 feet.
Correct. With regard to the landing only, the 29 square feet.
And then the third variance we're hearing is regarding the interior parking space, 19 versus 20 feet as required by the ordinance.
Correct,
That's
Mr.
correct.
Chairman.
Okay, so given that quick recap of what we're hearing, not to over-elaborate, does any member of the board feel a need to hear further testimony from the applicant, or from the applicant's witness? No?
No.
Okay. Liz says no? All right, I'm shaking his head no. Okay. And I, again, will recognize that there are no members of the interested public here. If there were, we would, of course, offer them the opportunity to question this witness as well. Mr. Weber, any further witnesses for this application?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. I would submit the application to the approval of the board.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Weber. We would similarly, at this time, offer members of the interested public the opportunity to provide commentary in favor or in opposition to the application. I think you can fairly recognize that this application being heard very recently, within the past year or so, there was even ample opportunity at that time for the public to comment. But seeing none tonight, we assume they're at a holiday party or otherwise enjoying their evening, not here in council chamber. Good for them, I suppose. Just to reiterate the conditions before we move into deliberations, I think the only condition that I have is the engineer's letter. Is there anything further? You'd like to?
Should we include any of the conditions, such as for the city forester and some of the other things in the prior resolution? I'm assuming our prior resolution is moot. That's considering the case all over again, and there are a number of things, that we put through the whole, what we found,
Care to opine on that point, Mr. Weber?
Should they all be in, should all of this go into the new resolution?
I have no objection to that. I think that would be appropriate, since this constitutes essentially an amendment.
Carry
I think
forward.
that's appropriate. And I appreciate Mr. Steiner's astute observation.
All right, thank you for speaking up, Joe. So we'll carry forward the conditions that were included in the prior application, or prior resolution, into this future resolution. Does that make sense, Mr. Mandel?
It does.
Excellent, all right. Then we can open this revised application to the board's deliberations. Joe already spoke up, so you can take a break. Anyone else care to kick us off?
I don't have a problem with the variances themselves. I think what bothers me a little bit about this application is why was there testimony that it wasn't going to be demolished, but then it was demolished?
Good question.
I don't know if I should ask that of the applicant or...
Mr. Weber, we're all friends here, come back up. Yeah.
What was the situation with that?
Mr. Carnival's the contractor. He's ill right now, otherwise we expected to bring him in case that question came up. When you look at the report from Krista Anderson, she summarizes what had happened. So during the course of construction, the board was working with an existing structure. During that construction, it was determined that some of the walls were not sufficient to be used again. Rather than work with DCS directly, say, look, I have a problem with these walls, too many of the walls were taken down. I think there was one wall left in the back. As a result, the building didn't become a pre-existing building, it became a new building. So as a result, once it was a new building, a stop work order issued because it shifted over the 7 inches, and at that point, then they stopped work. So it's now working because they said, well, we'll go ahead, we'll take out the family room and the side porch, so we have a compliant application so we can get back up and working. So that's why they're back up and working, but they're not back up and working on the design that's been presented to the board.
Mr. Weber, do you know what was wrong with the walls?
All I heard was that they were insufficient to support the construction that was being proposed.
It was is it fair to characterize it as a previously unknown structural defect?
Correct.
Something to that.
It happens a lot, with termite, with destroying insects, rot.
Right.
But the appropriate step is to go to DCS, get them involved, make sure that it's handled in a way, okay, take this wall down, leave that one, take this wall down, and then you work it around piecemeal. So that's preserved, and also honoring the 8 feet, 7 inches that the board approved. So 7 inches is still 7 inches.
Mr. Weber? I think in continuation of our deliberations then, Catherine, that whole set of circumstances bothers me. You can sit down, sorry. Mr. Weber. It bothers me for sure, because while these unforeseen structural defects do occur, we happen to see them from time to time with some regularity. And I feel like they're kind of playing a game with us. Some folks, I'm not saying that's the case here. I think, at least I'll offer my opinion, because the modifications that are offered are definitionally de minimis, I don't feel like they're doing this to abuse the variance process. Don't love it. I just don't suspect they like the stop work order any more than anyone did on Iris Road or what have you. So that's how I sleep at night, at least on this issue.
I guess my one question is, who stopped? The contractor who said, whoops, we got a problem? Or our city officials who said, wait a minute, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you need to stop?
Probably city officials. I don't know, Chris, if you have any insights you'd care to offer.
I don't recall who was first on it. Perhaps Ms. Califf might remember. I think she had the initial discussion with Krista, but...
It would change my opinion if, because what would we be left with today if the contractor goes on and says, okay, wait a minute, we have to move this around, et cetera, now we have a house built that isn't what we approved, isn't what we said we would do, and I don't know why we're giving them relief for that.
Again, in the context of deliberation, I feel like we're giving them effectively what we approved the last time with very minor modification. Don't love it. No, they don't love it. No, this is not how this is supposed to work, but that's kind of also what we do here, so. Any further points anyone would like to address here in deliberations?
I don't love this either. Probably begrudgingly supportive, I would characterize it.
Yeah.
I mean, we see this all the time, and, we're faced with this process of asking, of granting forgiveness rather than permission. And I don't know where you draw the line here. This doesn't seem abusive in terms of the totality of the circumstances, but then again, these are de minimis variances, and one could make the argument that, okay, they're de minimis, make a conforming plan. But we have a foundation laid at the site, and I fear that the overall detriment posed by forcing that on the applicant is just outweighs any real benefit that you would render onto the community. I think ultimately refreshing the housing stock is a benefit to the community, and modernizing everything in that neighborhood I think is a good thing. We're seeing that going on all throughout the neighborhood, and I think it would be consistent with the character of the area and the overall purpose of the master plan, and just sort of beautifying the area. So I'm reluctantly supportive.
I wouldn't want it to get lost, the continued sensitivity to stormwater management, which we perhaps jokingly referred to in the earlier exchange, but Iris and Canoebrook and Wallace and that whole area of Summit, it has improved substantially, I would say, through significant investment by the municipality and the county and others over the years. But individual homeowners contributing to the improved stormwater management conditions should not be dismissed, and should be, if anything, counted as a benefit when looking to weigh any detriments against the application. So I would add that as well. Anyone else care to add to the deliberations? Claire, you can, if you'd like. It's your moment to shine.
I was not a member of the zoning board when the first application came in, but listening to the conversation about, are we just slapping the Canone's wrist, or what and the size of the variance, it sort of strikes me as this is a misdemeanor and they've spent 4 months in jail. And so maybe they've done, served their time. That's kind of how I see it.
And I think too, one of the things that reassures me is I know that Mr. Weber, Mr. Hollows, the architect, takes the story of this board's distaste for these circumstances, and that gets spread among the construction community, and any derelict, someone with a wrecking ball, next time they're faced with an extra wall that they're going to take down or not going to take down, will think twice, to know that the board does not look favorably upon these circumstances, especially if they're precipitated intentionally, though I don't at least, suspect that to be the case in this particular application. Okay. Anyone else care to weigh in? No? Okay. Then with that, given the conditions that were noted, I would ask for a motion to approve the application.
So moved.
Mullen, do we have a second?
Second.
It's Ms. Toth, so she has her fingerprints on it as well. Chris?
All right, Vice Chairwoman Newell?
Yes.
Mr. Steiner? Mr. Mullen?
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
And Chairman Spur?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Weber. Good luck with Canones.
Good luck.
Just leave A1. Just like on the side, there's fine.
Next, we're going to hear 131 Mountain Avenue. Catherine Schwartzstein will recuse from this, and she will send back Ms. Sager. She can when she goes to the lobby. Tag team.
Catherine's recused. And where's
Hold on, with you.
I see you, Claire's right, but you're gonna do right. So is this another 6 months?
Okay, so that's another one that's got our credentials.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think Steve will have it.
He's been here.
Yes, yes. Short answer, yes. All right. We'll let Cindy get set up first, and then we'll get you guys going.
Oh, nice.
Try it, yeah. I mean, see how this works or doesn't work. I don't know. So, we'll see where that goes. Okay, next on the agenda, 131 Mountain Avenue, Scott and Elizabeth Ryan. If you would care to swear in the applicants?
All right, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm the testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Who's going to be testifying this evening?
I will.
Okay, please state your name, spell your last name, give us your office address, give us your home address. Thank you. We don't want to know where you work.
I'm Elizabeth Ryan, R-Y-A-N, and I live at 131 Mountain Avenue.
Okay. Are you testifying first, or is the architect? All right,
I'm going to go first.
all right.
So this is my husband Scott. I'm Elizabeth. We actually moved into our house 15 years ago last week. And at the time we were newlyweds, we were relocating from Hoboken, and we found Summit to be the place that we wanted to raise our future family. 15 years later, we're here. We have 2 children, an 11-year-old, 13-year-old at LCJSMS. We're involved in our community. Scott coaches our son's baseball team. I've served on the board as the president of the board at Brayton Elementary School, Summit Junior Baseball and Softball, and we're members of St. Teresa of Avila Parish, as well as the Elks Club. We are both from upstate New York, and we don't have family close by. It's important to know that we've made lifelong friends here. We truly consider Summit to be our home. As time goes on, we realize that the house we bought as a starter house has become our forever home. We also realize that we are in desperate need of more space. Due to COVID, we both have been working at home full-time, and we will continue to do so. So home office space is critical to us. And we also recognize the need to repurpose our first floor to carve out better flow of living space. And finally, with 2 almost teenagers, we are in desperate need of our own master bathroom. We love Memorial Field, we love the neighborhood, we love our proximity to town, we love that our children have had an opportunity to grow up in such an amazing and vibrant community. We have wonderful next-door neighbors, Priya and Dianath that live at 129 Mountain Avenue, and Tom and Deirdre Bracken at 133 Mountain Avenue. They are all very supportive of our project and are just as excited to see the final results as we are. When we first considered renovating our home, we did not know that the project would require any variances, considering that we only planned on building above what was already there, and we were not going any closer to any of the property lines. We hired our architect Cindy Lay based on recommendations from friends in Summit who have also used her. And during the design process, Cindy did a zoning analysis and alerted us that we would need a variance to do the improvements. At this point, we were already committed to making our home work for us, so we decided to move forward. So if there are no questions for Scott or me, we'll turn it over to Cindy, and she can go through the particulars of what the variance would be.
Any questions from members of the board for the applicants? No? And a quick question, any members of the interested public here this evening for this application, 131 Mountain Avenue? No? Okay, wonderful. You may be seated, Ms. Bornerlay, we'll swear you in.
Well, you actually had your hand raised, and you did take the oath, but please state your name, spell your last name, and give us your office address.
Cindy Bornerlay, BOERNER-LAY, 6 Squire Hill Road, Long Valley, New Jersey. And I've been in front of this board a couple times in the past.
So I've been told.
A repeat offender.
That's right. Yes, we'll accept your credentials this evening, and maybe, Ms. Bornerlay, before you begin, just to be clear, and I think the applicants touched on this, we're essentially looking at variances to approve pre-existing nonconformities. That's really what we're talking about tonight.
And we're actually also removing an existing variance.
Even better. All right, then please proceed.
So these are the same drawings that you have in front of you. Nothing has changed. I'm just going to briefly walk you through the project. So this is the same sheet 2 that you also have. So on the first floor, we're basically, we're very sensitive to the fact that our building coverage was already over, so we're not adding any additional square footage on the first floor. We're basically rearranging existing space to make more efficient use of it. The only reason why we actually need a building coverage variance is because currently the front entrance is in the middle, and we're moving it off to the side. Basically, utilize this room better. So with the entrance being in the middle, the entire room basically becomes a giant foyer. And kind of becomes useless. So by moving it off to the side where the stairs are, we're creating a foyer space and then sort of a room to the side which we'll use as a dining area, because we're taking the existing dining room and kitchen and combining it into a kitchen to enlarge the kitchen space. We're turning an existing office and breaking it up into an office and mudroom. They do have a detached garage, so you enter along the driveway here and the back entrance, so creating a back mudroom space off the back there. And then we're reworking the existing family. So currently there's a bathroom sort of in the corner of the family room, which is kind of like this weird wart in the corner of the family room. So we're rearranging that, moving the powder room to the front to kind of create a pantry and powder room area, and then the family room. But like I said, not actually adding any additional square footage at the first floor. At the second floor, currently there's a bathroom and 3 bedrooms. We'll be cutting through one of the bedrooms to create a hallway space to a new master suite that's built entirely over the existing first floor family room. Sheet 3, which is your front and side elevation. So from the front, you can see the front entrance portico shifted to the side. Again, currently it is in the middle. And then you can see the new master addition built over the existing family room. From the side, again, the new master suite built over the existing family room. Sheet 4, which is your rear elevation, and the other side. So again, the new master suite built over the existing first floor family room, and then way back in the distance, the new master suite built over the existing first floor family room. So now on to the variances that we require. So sheet 1. We require a side yard combined variance and a building coverage variance, both for existing non-conforming conditions. Our individual side yards actually conform. However, our existing and proposed side yard combined is 23 feet, whereas 29.3 is required. Besides being an existing condition that we're merely matching, we believe we have the hardship of a wedge-shaped lot. Thus, as you go further back on the lot gets narrower. At the point where our side yard setback is smallest, our lot width is only 68.5 feet versus 88.8 feet at the front yard setback. So we have to take our side yard combined percentage at this point, even though our pinch point and our side yard setback combined is back at this point. If we took the 33% of the narrowest lot width where our side yard setbacks are taken, it would actually only be a requirement of 22.6 feet and we'd be conforming. However, since the lot narrows, and again, our lot is wider at the front, a variance is required. This is marked as A1. It's a Google view, and I'm going to ask for some sharing.
You're good for now.
So as mentioned, this is a Google Street View. This is basically the looking at this side yard area between my client's house and the next door neighbor's house.
And just, Ms. Bornelli, just to be clear, so the image capture says September 2016. Is it your testimony that this fairly represents the current conditions?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, okay. I didn't see that.
So there's some landscape screening at this side as well as fence screening. It should also be noted that this is our neighbor's driveway side and they have a detached garage that borders the property line at this pinch point on our lot. So it's very well separated from the neighbor's yard and their backyard view because, like I said, it's their driveway and the garage is in between the 2 points. Our building coverage is existing non-conforming at 1,743.5 square feet or 22.2% existing and proposed, whereas 1,568.16 square feet or 20% is required. I generally find it's very difficult to meet the building coverage requirement when there's a detached garage involved. The garage being 240.5 square feet and accounting for more than half of our existing overage. In addition, we're not increasing building coverage at all, but again, because we're relocating that front entrance portico, we require a variance. We believe relocating the portico, as I mentioned, just makes more efficient use of the space. We do not believe that this change drastically alters the streetscape, nor does it block the air, light, or view of any neighboring properties. Lot coverage, so an existing variance is being removed. We are removing 200.69 square feet of an existing back patio and front path area. Lot coverage will now be conforming at 39.53%, whereas 42.09% is existing and 40% is the maximum allowed. We believe this is a benefit to the lot and the surrounding neighborhood, reducing any potential runoff. We believe we have the hardship of existing wedge-shaped lot, C1 variance, which makes our side yard setback smaller the further we go back on the lot. The side yard combined is already non-conforming and we are not worsening the condition, merely matching it. In addition, the building coverage is also non-conforming. We are not increasing the building coverage, but because we are relocating the front entrance, it requires a variance. We believe we've been very sensitive to the overage by reworking the first floor and more efficiently using existing space we have versus adding on any additional square footage at the first floor level. It should also be reiterated that we're removing the lot coverage variance with our proposal. We also believe we conform to a C2 variance. We don't believe that our addition is creating any negative effect on our property or any neighboring properties, and the improvements of upgrading the housing stock is a benefit. In conclusion, for all these reasons and more, we hope that the board looks positively upon our neighborhood. Thank you. I also just wanted to respond to the professional comments. Since we're reducing lot coverage, as per the engineer's comments as well, we hope that a grading plan will not be required. Obviously, if the engineering department does require one, we will conform, but we hope that the board can also recommend that they don't believe one is necessary. I have another handout. This is A2. This is a site plan and also another site photo.
When was this photo taken?
So this was taken when I did the measuring and as-built, so it would have been done in April.
Of this year, April 2021.
So A2 consists of 2 sheets, the first one being I guess a scaled down or smaller copy or picture of
Site plan, yes.
the site plan, and then the second is a pictorial of the home, correct? Thank you.
So an additional AC condenser may be required, and it would be located next to the existing AC condenser, which is noticed on that site plan, so you can see, yep, the existing one. The new one would be stuck right next to it, and if you look at the second page on the photo, that's where the existing AC condenser is amongst that landscaping, and as you can see, you can't see it. So that landscaping would obviously be maintained and or improved as needed. In addition, the Ryans would like to consider the potential of adding a generator. Again, indicated on that site plan, we would propose putting it in that sort of similar area where all that other stuff is. Again, there's already landscaping there. So again, it can be maintained and or elaborated as needed, and no additional variances would be needed to put the generator in that location.
Landscaping would be modified to appropriately screen for the visual and any audio effect?
Correct.
Okay. Where do they want to put the generator? Where do they want to put it? Yeah. Next to in front of the air conditioning, or on the front section.
So if you look in the photo on the second page, it's in that landscaping bed as well. It would kind of basically be in front of that little decorative tree or ornamental tree.
The driveway's here, right? Because the driveway for the neighbors is to the left here, sorry?
Yes, the neighbor's driveway
Is here, okay. Okay, but it would conform with the ordinance?
Correct.
Right, we're not seeking a variance in that respect. Okay. Any further in terms of testimony?
I am done.
Okay, well done. We'll let the board digest this exhibit for a moment, and Joe, I know you're not speaking tonight. Anyone, any other questions?
I have a
for Ms.
question.
Borderway?
Just on this site plan that you just handed out as Exhibit A2, along the right-hand side, there's kind of a long, very narrow rectangle. What does that indicate along the right-hand side of the driveway? This.
Are you an engineer?
Yes, is that like, I think it's like
So is it like a planter?
little railroad ties like around that?
Is it a planter?
Oh, it's a bed. It's a bed.
A planting bed.
It's a planting bed with trees, or shrubs.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Dower, while the board is digesting this still, anything you'd like to raise for the points from the engineer's letter?
I really have nothing. There's no increase in impervious coverage. They answered the question regarding the air conditioner and the generator, so I'm fine with it.
And it would be acceptable to condition the application on acceptance of the engineer's letter? Yes. That makes sense. Yes, okay, thank you.
Will the portico be the same design as the existing one?
Very similar, so the existing one's actually been closed in, and it's turned into kind of like a little foyer space, so this new portico would be open, but similar sort of roof line, but on columns and open. Because we're basically creating an internal foyer, we don't need that extra vestibule.
Any other questions from members of the board for Ms. Bornerley? I would note that there still appears to be no other members of the interested public here this evening. We would typically offer them the opportunity to ask questions. All right, one last chance for questions for Ms. Bornerley. Anyone from the board? No? Okay. And then I'd just offer the applicants anything you'd like to say in summation for your application. Oh, excellent. All right, before we move into deliberations, again, not seeing any member of the interested public here, we would offer those persons the opportunity to comment on the application, but they're missing that opportunity. We'll note that the only condition that we would subject the application to is acceptance of the engineer's letter, which is a typical condition. Who would like to begin?
Do you want to add the standard for the generator?
All captured in the ordinance.
To testing and all that other.
So the
Standard.
applicant has testified that they will conform with the ordinance with regard to
That's not the
testing.
ordinance, we put it in every resolution.
Well, it's included in the DRO now, is it
Yeah,
not?
they added it in the DRO, so we didn't have to, but
It's in the
it's
DRO.
also in the transcript now, so there's special attention and testimony.
We've done it every time for 4 years, so.
No, it's within the DRO, so as long
Now
as
it's
you're not
double caught, so.
Yeah, as long as there's no deviation from what's within the DRO, and that's with respect to timing of the generator exercising.
And the time.
Right.
Testing.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So yes, just the engineer's letter then as a condition. We'd like to begin deliberations.
Well, I'm happy to kick it off, though I've got to say, I think the architect has already given us the script for this. You know, there are hardships with the irregularly shaped lot. We're decreasing impervious coverage, excuse me, there. You know, not increasing the size of the building on the property, and certainly walking the street beyond what the photos show. It's just very clear that you've got plenty of space on either side of the lot with your neighbors. There is some distance on both sides, so nobody's going to feel loomed over or squeezed. So I can certainly support this application.
Excellent. Anyone care to add Ms. Toth's comments? No pressure?
No, I mean, it's a modest renovation. It's going to increase your comfortability at home with your kids. So I would definitely approve the application.
And I would just to further elaborate on what Claire had said, not only is the decrease in impervious coverage to be noted, but it's moved now to a conforming condition, which is excellent. We appreciate that. And with regard to impact on neighbors, from observation of the site itself and the testimony provided today, there appears to be no clear negative impact in terms of air or light or the view with which any of the neighbors would be impacted. So that's appreciated within the design, and I too could support the application. Do we have a motion to approve the application with the condition as noted? Mr. Millay, do we have a second? All right, Ms. Newell. Chris, will you give us a roll call?
Sure. Vice Chairwoman Newell?
Yes.
Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Mr. Mullen?
Yes.
Mr. Millay?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
Ms. Sager?
Yes.
And Chairman Spur?
Yes. All right, thank you very much. Good luck with your project. Yep.
Good luck.
Anyone care for a brief recess?
I've had a long one.
That's true. You don't count, Diana. Anyone care for a recess? Ron, you okay?
I'm okay.
Keep going?
Thank you. Yep.
All right, let's keep plugging along. Feeling a good energy from the board tonight, so let's keep going. All right, next is 20 Karen Way, Michael and Maria Tapia.
Good evening. Who's going to be testifying?
Oh.
I'm sorry?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Let's bring Catherine back in. Sorry, we're missing a board member.
Oh. I didn't see anybody sneak out. Your eyes are better than mine.
Catherine!
Oh, okay.
Good eye. Thank you, Joe. She's done that. Nudge a board member here.
I have to go find her.
For a beer.
I know, right?
No flavor.
Guys.
Sorry, pizza delivery? Yeah, that's good. Let the record show that Ms. Schwartzstein has returned. Ready, Mr. Chairman?
All right. I'm sorry, who's going to be testifying? All right. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your name, spell your last name, and I'm guessing you're a professional, so state your office address.
Okay, so my name is Daniel Duvenet. My office is Duvenet Architects. I'm located in Short Hills, New Jersey. I've appeared before this board. It's been a while. Actually, I did Mr. Tapia's original variance in 2009 before this board. My license is in good standing, and
Does the board have any issues with accepting this gentleman as an expert in the field of architecture? Hearing none, seeing none. Why don't you tell us what your client would like to do and why?
okay, great. Thank you so much. We are seeking a one-story addition towards the rear of the property that will replace a very large deck that exists today. The addition will be 20 by 19, one story. It will house a new kitchen, dining room, and we're going to remodel some of the interiors, first floor, so the kitchen, dining, family room on the first floor with a half bath. And we would like to add a new deck adjacent to this new addition. So there are, in addition to that, we're going to update the roof lines on the home and bring that, I guess, closer to conforming to the design standards that Summit has. So there are 3 variances associated with this application. All are existing non-conforming. So the first is side yard setback. In the zone, 12 feet is required. The house is at 10, and the proposals, for all intents and purposes, is going to be 10, but because there's a slight orientation shift of the house on the lot, it actually, instead of being 10, will be at 9.81, so relatively 10. So the idea is to keep the right side elevation in line. So there's 1 variance needed for the side yard setback, and again, it's existing non-conforming that we'd like to extend. The second is building coverage. So the home is currently over on building coverage. We'll be reducing it about 447 square feet. So we'll need a variance for, I apologize, that's lot coverage. We'll be reducing the lot coverage by 447 square feet. And we'll be reducing building coverage by 150. So although we're still over, I think that one of the benefits of this application, the strong points, is that we're going to take these 2 existing non-conformities, the lot coverage and building coverage, and reduce them in size. And another nice benefit of this application is currently there's a large deck where the addition is going to go. So by moving the deck adjacent to our family room, it's going to create a more protected environment for the Tapias to be out on their deck and not be kind of on top of the neighbors. There will be, there's quite a few positive criteria, and honestly didn't find any negatives. Positive is, again, we're going to reduce the 2 existing non-conformities, building coverage and lot coverage. We will not block anyone's light and airspace, and I had a chance to study just the way the sun moves around the property, so as a result of this addition, it won't cast any shadows the adjacent neighbors. There'll be no trees that will need to be removed. It will enhance the home, it will enhance the streetscape, and again, get closer to the Summit design standards in terms of the roof lines and elevation. And that's our application. Again, we were here 13 years ago for something similar, although it was, I guess, they were younger and they wanted to add a master bedroom suite above, so it was going to be a 2-story addition. So now, I guess the kids are getting older, the needs are a little less and more about the entertainment space. So that's why, I guess for many other reasons, they never did the previous variance that we were approved for. Time went on, needs change, and the application's changed a bit, although the ask is still relatively the same.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dower, anything you'd like to call out from the engineer's letter?
The numbers seem to be a little bit off from what we had reviewed for both building coverage and lot coverage, but it's still a reduction in lot coverage, so there's no stormwater requirements. The only other comment that we had was the existing proposed AC units and a generator, the usual standard things that where they're located, and confirm that they're going to be screened for both noise and visually.
Yeah, we would accept that. And as with prior applications, is it acceptable that we condition the application on acceptance of the engineer's letter and the conditions noted therein?
And if I might, very quickly, Mr. Chairman, with respect to paragraph 16, it appears that that's a question mark. Some of your other reports, I know that didn't have any objection. Do you think that a stormwater management system might be required, or a seepage pit, or?
No, actually, that is standard language we put in there. That because in the event that, even based on what they've submitted, if what they do causes a stormwater problem to either their property or to neighboring properties, that they have to remedy that. That's just a condition of one of the board approvals.
Makes sense to me. I guess my question would be, how do you enforce that? Because that's it, jurisdiction is gone from this board.
Well, it would be through the city, through city engineering. So during the time of when they do the as-built inspection, the city can determine, or if there's a complaint from a neighbor, they get out there, there's ponding water, they should remedy that because the applicant doesn't want ponding water, neighbors don't want ponding water. So it would be that followed by an inspection.
Thank you,
on the
Chris.
site.
Okay.
Questions from members of the board for the applicant's architect?
Where is the drive? I think this said that, you said that you're reducing the driveway.
Yes, so there's a detached garage towards the rear property, and there's a lot of pavement back there that we, of course, I'm sure they would like, but I pushed for it, they agreed. But let's get rid of that, let's reduce lot coverage. So to the right of the detached garage, we'll be reducing lot coverage.
How much square footage are you removing?
Front lot coverage, 447.
So is that all in the driveway, or is it?
Yeah, the driveway, the front walkway, as well as, there's a reduction in building coverage. Part of the building coverage is calculated to the lot.
Okay, so you're getting rid of the deck entirely,
Yes.
and there won't be a replacement?
Yes, it'll be a smaller deck located in the L of the home, so as the addition sticks out, the deck will be against the home and nestled in the L shape of the addition. The existing deck was quite large.
Yeah.
It was quite large.
Comprehensive space.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
At what point did you extend the driveway? Because Chris just said, you know, she doesn't know when or how the driveway came to have so much pavement.
That was done in, I believe, 2009, 2010.
Oh, geez, sorry. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm the testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name, spell your last name, give us your address.
Michael Tapia, 20 Karen Way, Summit.
Thank you, Mr. Tapper.
Sorry. Just do it. Can you just state your question again, and then, sorry.
So, we had an existing detached two-car garage, so the driveway, everything was existing. The garage is falling apart, so it was rebuilt and repaved. So it was all existing when we purchased the home.
Was that part of the 2009 application?
Yes.
No.
No, it wasn't. No, it was 2010. There were permits submitted for that.
Okay.
For the rebuild of the garage and the driveway.
Okay, and all those permits got closed?
Yes.
Oh, that doesn't make, because then
Yes,
she
usually.
would have said that.
Yeah, I think what Mike is saying is that the garage was there, the asphalt was there. In 2010, he rebuilt the garage and repaved what was there. There was no additional.
There
But
wasn't
prior,
a-
you
there
didn't have a
wasn't
permit.
addition. What's that?
You didn't have a permit for the,
You had a permit.
We did have a permit, yes.
so Krista
Chris's
would have,
comment doesn't make a lot of sense then. She's saying she doesn't know how or why it got there.
Well, I
We're
think
hearing testimony that we.
he
we got
inherited it.
closed
I
permit.
mean, certainly the survey that, she even mentioned it, the survey that I submitted is the same survey submitted in 2009, which showed the extensive amount of impervious coverage, and actually part of our 2009 application was to reduce it as well. So it's something that happened before they bought the property. That's what she's referring to, is that we can't date, there's no previous survey that shows it otherwise. Less than.
when did you buy the property?
2005, I believe.
So Mr. Tapia's survey is from when he bought the property.
So that additional impervious coverage was present when you bought the property?
Yes.
It wasn't remedied until now this proposal, where you're proposing to address the additional impervious coverage?
Correct.
Is there additional,
Well, it's just odd, because you figure when you get the permit in 2010,
yeah.
the city would have picked up on that. They're usually pretty thorough.
If there's any city employees here, perhaps around the water cooler tomorrow, they can resolve that.
Yeah, it'll be brought up to Ms. Anderson's attention.
Yeah, but I agree, it should
She
have,
spent
the
a lot of
permitting
time.
process, right?
She spent a lot of time looking through this, how this driveway was there. She looked through old tax records even, trying to figure out how this happened, and, she didn't reach a definitive conclusion. So, extensive efforts go into trying to find these kinds of things when it's returned to the board.
And then, and one other question, can you opine a bit on landscaping and fencing? Any plans to change, modify either landscaping or fencing as part of, not necessarily the application, but whatever work will be done?
So there's existing fencing that goes along the back of the property.
Yes.
Our neighbors to the left of us are actually rebuilding their entire home, so they had fencing, but I think they're redoing that as well. And my neighbor to the right actually just called me last week that he would like to put a fence up along his back of the house.
So with respect to the fencing in the rear, what, is there fencing there now?
There is fencing, there was existing.
And that's on the neighbor's property, though? That's not on your property?
That's on my property.
It is, so it will be removed, and your neighbor is planning to replace it on their
No,
property?
no, that fencing is staying there.
Okay.
On the rear of the property.
Okay.
Just the right side of the home and the left side of the neighbors are replacing their fencing.
Okay.
On the right side, they're actually installing a fence, they don't have one right now.
Okay. And then we'll note from the prior, the 2009 resolution, to the earlier point, there was listed as a condition, the applicant is to eliminate additional paving to the right side of the garage to reduce lot coverage to 40.9%. So that issue was raised then, was anticipated to be remedied. That project was not undertaken, so as a result, this condition was brought. Okay.
If you were seeking 40.9 back then, and now you're seeking 43 point something, why is that?
Because now we're building a deck on that side, between the L of the home, so that the deck is gonna be there, and it's gonna be a part of the yard.
So that the intended construction plan is different than it was certainly in 2009. And that's what accounts for potentially, what, the 3% difference between the 40.9% lot coverage that was requested and approved in 2009 and the 43.4 that is requested this evening.
Thank you.
Other questions from members of the board, the architect or the applicant? No? Okay. I would note that there doesn't appear to be any members of the interested public here this evening. No? Just patient applicants hanging in the back. We would offer you both the opportunity to ask questions, but also provide any comment on the application, but hearing and seeing none, that opportunity will not present itself. The only then condition that I have noted is acceptance of the engineer's letter, which the applicant has agreed to. Is there anything, Mr. Tapia, you'd like to say in conclusion for the application this evening?
No, not at all, thank you for your time.
Okay, excellent. All right, so noting that one condition, would someone care to begin deliberations this evening? No? Quiet group? David, go ahead, help us out.
I'm in favor of the application. The existing conditions of the lot are not going to be adversely affected by this addition. It will enhance the usability of the home. It will modernize it in a way that is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. I note the newly built home going up next door and homes along Carrierway in various states of demolition. I observed on my walk over there the other day. Well, it was very cold out. Yeah, I see really no detriments here and only benefits.
Care to elaborate on Mr. Mullen's deliberations? Yeah, just to put a finer point in that, the reduction in building coverage as well as lot coverage is a clear improvement of conditions of the given property. There appears to be no negative impact on light, air, or space for the property. And I think unlike the 2009 application, I'll say an extra prayer that this work gets done and the reduction of the impervious coverage actually is reflected and this lot is improved to the benefit of the community, let alone the homeowner. So I could support the application with the condition as noted. Anyone care to make a motion to approve the application?
I'll move.
Claire?
I'll second.
Second, Diana? Chris, you give us a roll call?
Sure, Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Motion carries. Get a shovel in the ground within a year as opposed
I
to
thought that was
12.
going to be in the resolution that you had.
I'm not writing the check, so yeah, sorry. Yeah. Go for it. Thank you very much, Mr. Tappy.
Good luck.
All right, next up, Keelan Dunn, 135 Rotary Drive. Everyone's good? No need for breaks?
We're good.
Pretty good.
Okay.
All right. May I, Mr. Chairman?
Let's let them settle for just a moment here. Sorry. Go ahead. Yep, no, you're good. All right.
Thank you.
Ms. Mandel.
Who's testifying first? Good, okay. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm the testimony about to give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name, give us your address.
I'm Keelan Dunn, D-U-N-N. I live at 135 Rotary Drive.
Okay, Ms. Dunn, if you just give us a brief introduction to your application, and then we'll let your architect do the heavy lifting for you.
Okay. Yes, I'm Keelan Dunn. I live 135 Rotary Drive. We've lived there almost 2 years now. I live with my husband Thomas Dunn and our almost 2-month-old son and our 3-month-old son. We are looking to seek permission to fly and such, like, even out our backyard to just create a nice and safe grass area to play and utilize, actually. We started this process kind of shortly after we moved in. We retained permits to do removal of just like 3 or 4 oak trees. And then we're put in touch with Rick Matias, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, but he's extremely helpful to get this going. We applied for a grading permit at that point, and then were instructed that we had to apply for zoning board approval because of the steep slope disturbance of 980 square feet being so close to the 1,000 square foot threshold. So I would just turn to Kathy for the rest. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good
Just
evening.
pause for a quick moment here.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. We're all excited to get this done, don't worry.
It's a retaining wall.
I just want to ask a quick question. I see 2 gentlemen here in the audience. Are you here as members of the interested public for the application? Do you plan to ask any questions, or we'll see? Fair enough. Okay, all right, I'll pause at each kind of juncture here and give you the opportunity. Do you have any questions for the applicant, or do you want to wait to hear the further testimony?
You've got to come up.
Just give me a nod, a yes or a no. You do, okay. So when you do plan to ask your questions, I'll ask you to come forward. But at least for now, any questions from members of the board? None? And then we're going to hear from a professional witness. Do you have any questions at this point?
No.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dower. Thank you, everyone. Okay, next up.
Swear affirm the testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
All right, please state your name, spell your last name, give us your office address.
Sure. Catherine with a C, Muller, M-U-E-L-L-E-R, president of Page Muller Engineering in Warren Township, New Jersey. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. My license is in good standing. I've been in front of this board a couple times with Zoom lately, otherwise.
That's where I
It
recognize
was
you
really
from. There you
early
go.
in my career the last time I was here in person. So I'm here on behalf of Ms. Dunn for the application that she explained to you.
We'll just note for the record, we accept your credentials. May
Thank you
proceed.
very much.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So what we had done for the project is, Ms. Dunn came to us, we did a partial survey, we did a lot grading plan, and figured it'd be submitted for approval. In that review, they identified or requested us to do a steep slopes analysis. As you've heard, we have about 980 square feet in the rear yard that'll be disturbed as we flatten out the backyard and fill with the wall. Our disturbance is less than 5,000 square feet, so soil erosion is not required with the certification, but we will have silt fence and proper soil erosion measures for the project throughout the duration. What we're proposing is approximately 160, 170 linear feet of modular block wall. It'll be placed along the sides and the rear property line. We have it inset approximately a foot for construction tolerance, and also just general maintenance. You can walk around without being on your neighbor's property to kind of scoot around it. We don't show it on the plans, but the applicant does intend to put in a 4-foot aluminum fence on top. That'll be a total of 8 feet for the wall and the fence,
less than the 10-foot maximum per the city code. When we put in the fence, we also had to take into account that there's an existing utility easement along the rear property line. In conversations that the applicant had with Rick Matias, the city engineer, it was for stormwater benefits. They had come out, the DPW, they flushed the lines that are there, they're all clear, they're functioning properly. So what we've done is it actually drains towards the back, naturally, on the steep slopes, and then drains from left to right, very gradually. There's kind of a scoured hole on the right side to force drainage into the inlet that's located on the property. So when we raised and flattened up the backyard, we did not continue the slope so that it would drain over the top of the wall towards our neighbors in the rear. Right before the wall, we have a swale at 1.5%, so that from the left side, the lawn will also pitch to the right side. We'll raise up the existing grate, and the backyard will actually drain to that grate more efficiently than it does under existing conditions. So we see that as a improvement to the grading and the drainage in the back. We're here tonight, as you heard, we do have steep slope disturbance. It's 980 square feet for areas over 15%. But when we did the zoning review and the updated evaluation of the current survey, there was also 2 pre-existing variances or nonconformities that were identified. One is the building coverage at 19.9%, where 18 is allowable. As Ms. Anderson stated in her letter, in the past, 20% was allowable. So during the course of the years, the house was built in the 70s, the ordinance has changed, making that a pre-existing nonconformity under today's standards.
That's the building coverage you're referencing.
That's for the building coverage at 19.9. The lot coverage existing is 37.3%, where 35 is allowed. The property has the existing single-family home. It's a garage under entrance on the left. So we have the turnaround apron, and then there's a little bit of area that you could back out and pull out forward to the street. All of these, and also off the back, there's a series of decks and patios and steps so that you can get from the main living area down to all of the usable outdoor space and also to the garage under. All of these improvements were existing when the applicant bought the property in 2020. So they've inherited this, they have not done any other improvements to increase that coverage number. So we're asking for relief from the board for that tonight. One of the comments in your engineer's letter was with regards to the existing generator and the AC pads. The generator, although not labeled on my site plan, it's labeled on the surveys which we submitted, is the rectangle in between the house and the driveway on the left side. That'll remain. There is vegetation and landscaping around it, and the applicant has, since they purchased it, put a little lattice around it, further shading it from the street view. The AC condenser on the right side, also it's landscaped, it's not visible from the street, it's set down. That's proposed to stay as well. I reviewed the engineer's letter. The one item, as we had said, it was requested that the applicant TV the lines before and after construction. As I've stated, the DPW and the city engineer have already been out there. They flushed the lines. They determined it's working properly. So we would just ask that we do the TV after the construction, just to prove that it's still in good working condition. We already know just by the flushing, they didn't TV it, but they did determine it's in good condition. So we would just like to, do that step afterwards. The 4-foot retaining wall will have about half a block that will be buried. So we're not going deep into the ground with any kind of excavated foundation. So we don't anticipate disturbing the pipe, damaging the pipe, or any of the tree roots around. As you've heard, There was permits that were gotten or received for removal of the trees on the property. Our neighbors do have some trees. Mr. Linson's letter identified some trees in the northwest corner. I observed pictures that my junior engineer has taken. They're on the neighbor's property. So it's a little bit deceiving when you go out there, and I can see why he said that they may be on this property. Our property to the left extends beyond our backyard. And the people behind us have a shed that's set off from the property line quite a bit. So there's a gap in between that you would think our property would be as deep as our neighbors. But it's not. We're shallower. Those trees are off the property that he's referring to.
Are there root structures carry over into your property?
I would imagine so, but again, we're only excavating about 6 inches on the property line, just to set that first block.
Are there any other landscaping planned as part of this work, this construction?
We're not proposing any at the time, at this time.
Right.
Again, we don't identify it on the plans, but it's anticipated that a 4-foot aluminum fence will be placed on top of the wall. And then if some privacy shrubs, that would all be within that fenced-in area. Nothing within the foot of construction tolerance between the property line and the face of the wall.
Do you have any good ideas about addressing Mr. Linson's concerns about the potential root damage, recognizing that the trees themselves sit principally on a neighboring property?
I don't see any concern that we'll be damaging them. We can certainly add a note that caution be taken when excavating for the first block. You know, they'll excavate, the block's probably 8 to 12 inches. It'll be buried half a course. You'll have a couple inches of stone. So typically in this area, it was wooded. I would expect at least 6 inches of topsoil, possibly even more. For over the years, woods and the degrading leaves tends to thicken the topsoil. So we're happy to add a note to the plan. As far as the construction, I know I'd spoken to Sam at the city. He was just curious as to what we were going to do for the drainage behind the wall. I anticipate weep holes. It's not a significant height wall to have a footing drain to bring it around. Again, we're not digging down. We're going to be encountering groundwater or seepage. We're filling it up. So we're going to have proper grade on top to get the water to go to our swale, to the inlet. I don't anticipate a ton of water getting through, so just small weep holes should be sufficient for the construction of the wall that we're proposing.
Are there any safety concerns given the height of the wall?
Again, we're going to propose a 4-foot fence on top.
Mr. Dower, do you care to opine on? There's a lot of good meaty engineering questions here. So.
The only thing is, you know, the city, that was my concern, was the city was allowing them to build a wall and fill over an existing, it says either sanitary and or stormwater. I guess they determined that it's just stormwater, but that was a question when I first got this application. I think it's probably in the applicant's best interest to televise the line, even though they do say that it flushed well, because in the event, I mean, it can still run in the event that there's a crack in the pipe that you find when it's televised that possibly with the additional fill in the construction damages the pipe. You can point that out in the beginning, and they can either fix that or say that they're going to resolve it after the fact. I mean, they probably would like to fix it ahead of time, but I think it's probably in your best interest. It's not going to be, well, I shouldn't say it's not going to be that much money. I'm not really sure, but it's not an onerous amount. I think it'd be money well spent, especially since they're allowing you to do all these improvements over their easement. That's what I would recommend.
Is that acceptable to the applicant?
Yeah, will agree.
And then obviously then televise it after the fact to say that, you know, you didn't do anything damage to it. So, and it doesn't appear from what, you know, when I was out at the site, it doesn't appear that there's going to be any damage, any restriction on flow onto to neighboring properties, and that this will actually improve it, because most of the yard is not usable as it currently is. and it's pretty heavily wooded back there, and the drainage seems to flow into the area where the grade is, and the grade's gonna be raised, and the drainage, as I noted on top, is gonna have a swale. It's gonna take the new surface directed towards that swale, and then back down underneath.
Do you have any opinion on this tree root question?
You know, I'll defer to John Linson. My understanding it's not just tree roots that you don't want to hit. You don't want to impact the root zone, which is below the canopy of the tree. So again, I defer to John Linson about that.
I think what I'm struggling with is typically when we defer these questions to Mr. Linson, we call for a landscaping plan. It's not exactly the question here. It's not landscaping. It's a tree root plan. Joe, you got
Could we
it?
retain landscape jurisdiction along with the drainage jurisdiction for 2 years, so that if something does happen to the the neighboring property owners have recourse?
They could agree to that.
I mean, I'm saying this is a standard thing we do a lot.
I guess I'm not as much.
Feel that it would certainly give comfort to the neighbors that if something happens, they have someplace to go.
Right. Maybe let's separate the landscaping and drainage for a moment, though, right? So
Either and or both.
I guess with the landscaping, I ideally fashion a condition or it's not a condition, an interaction with Mr. Linson especially, and that would proactively address any issue with infringing upon the root zone. I'm not sure what I'm asking for, other than another conversation or
We can agree that when the construction starts, we'll set up a meeting with John Linson at the site. I wouldn't want a condition of a 2-year certification on my client on my neighbor's tree. You know, it could become diseased. It could be at the end of its lifetime now, and that this construction wouldn't impact it. They are behind us, you know, a good amount. I didn't go out and measure it. Typically, when we look at development adjacent to existing trees on lots, we try not to impede, or we try to impact less than 50% of the drip line. So when we put either fill, we typically don't cut significantly, or put in a driveway at grade. What happens is if we put impervious surface by the tree, it extends the roots in the other direction. So here, we will be filling on top, we'll have the construction of the wall, but it will be a small impact to the drip line. But we're happy to have John Linson come out and meet us at the field once the construction is started.
to address those concerns. Mr. Mandel, do you have any opinion on this? This seems square in your tricky legal world here about a tree on a neighboring property, but a drip line, a root structure that extends into, in this case, the applicant's
I
lot.
mean, yeah, you start with the premise that the roots are on my property and they shouldn't be in the first place, right? But we want to protect those trees. If it was a limb, you'd cut it down. So I am not a horticulturist. I have no idea how you are going to protect those roots if you even can.
Yeah, for me, and I'll open this to the board as well, a landscaping plan doesn't feel right. That's not really the question here. I think offering Mr. Linson an opportunity and to the greatest extent you can, deferring to his professional advice would be greatly appreciated by this board. That doesn't sound like a hard condition that I can necessarily incorporate within a resolution. Does anyone else from the board care to opine on this?
I have an idea. Didn't you removed some trees, you said, right?
We did, yes.
And I think it said it here, right? There were some oak trees that you took down, or what were the trees that you removed?
I believe they were oak trees, yeah.
How
White
many?
oak and red oak, I believe is a total of 4.
Okay. So, couldn't we just make her plant some trees? And then even if there's some damage to that one oak tree, then we've sort of compensated for it and just say either 1 or 2 trees, you have to replace, in essence, sort of replace some of the oak trees that you've already taken down.
So to plant a significant tree as an oak on the property after we do the fill, it's going to be either right in the middle of the backyard, which is what they're trying to create as their recreation area. Otherwise, it will be too close to the retaining wall because it's going to be up higher. So those roots are now going to be in fill and go out, spread out through the wall.
Okay,
so
through the wall. Okay. So you can't replace it with another tree.
I prefer not a big hardy oak. Again, landscaping may be in the future. We don't have it proposed right now. But if it was, it would be more ornamental, some green shrubs, along those lines.
Well, aren't you supposed to replant a tree after you take them down?
You don't, oh, are you supposed to?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You have to
Plan
take-
to, plan.
Right. I mean, you have to plant one after you take one down.
So,
Our favorite species, arborvitae.
Yeah.
So I think perhaps the middle ground, and I'll give credit where credit's due to our board secretary for this terminology, is a staging plan with Mr. Linson to address these concerns. So that this would, I think, alleviate the concern that we have, that you will take some formal step, a meeting, a conversation, a plan, to have identified that drip line, the root structure to the best of your ability, and consulted with the forester to ensure that you're minimizing to the greatest degree possible any negative impact upon those tree roots.
At the beginning of the construction or prior to construction?
Prior to construction would be beneficial.
Sure.
In case Mr. Linson says, this whole thing's not gonna work and you're gonna kill this tree and you gotta go back to the board or
If we
something
shift the
crazy.
wall a foot back, I don't know what his opinion's gonna be.
Right.
It will not change the variances that we're seeking here tonight.
Yeah, no, and I think the way, and let's work carefully, should this be approved, in the wording of the resolution, to find the right way to address the board's concern that we want the professional opinion of a forester to weigh in on this, for which we are not horticulturalists, none of us here, without giving full power to approve or disapprove this application to the forester, should he be concerned. So there's a middle ground to be struck here. I think it's in the language of the condition, in the resolution that we'll work to finalize together.
So, Mr. Chairman, what does the board do, or what does the applicant do if the forester says, no matter what you do here, you're gonna kill that tree?
Likely return the applicant here to the board for further consideration.
I'm not suggesting that's what's gonna happen, but if he says that, what do we do?
Potentially, it would require potentially a modification.
So as a condition of the approval in the resolution that we have a meeting prior to submitting for compliance?
I think that's right.
You're gonna have to get his okay and say, this is exactly what we're doing, and he's gonna have to sign off on it and say, okay, I don't see what you're doing is going to affect this tree, kill this tree, and any way negatively affect the tree.
Or you're doing the best you can to make sure.
Can you estimate how far this wall will be from those trees?
I think usually when they do the drip line, isn't that just like a circle around the outer branches of the tree and then?
We're gonna be a few feet from the trunk, but then, again, I didn't look up to see what the diameter of the drip line.
And there's a question, to your point, there's a question because of the relatively minor depth that you're gonna be actually disturbing soil in that particular location. You don't, right now, anticipate a negative impact on this precious tree that hopefully will live for many years beyond this board's deliberation. And
And it is on the neighbor's tree, so it has 180
Sure.
degrees of drip line that won't be impacted by our wall on our side. And I would imagine that the drip line, because they are kind of nestled right into the back corner of their property, that it extends actually to our neighbor to the south as well. So if it's right in the corner, we're only about a quarter of the drip line.
I think the language will end in something to the effect of the applicant will collaborate with the city forester to develop a plan to minimize any negative impact on this one precious tree.
That works.
I think that's sufficient.
I have-
The suggestion is it takes us a month to get a resolution. We might have a meeting prior to that point, so that right wording gets into the resolution.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this is
Hint.
it's a bit of uncharted territory for us here, so blaze a path for us.
I'm always happy to meet
Yeah.
John out in
I
the field,
have-
gets me away from my desk.
There you go.
If we've exhausted the tree root thing, I have some more questions. I'm not really familiar with a modular retaining wall that doesn't require like footings or any kind of a substructure that only needs like 6 inches underground that's going to hold back 4 feet of, and maybe this is a question for you, Chris, that's going to hold back 4 feet of topsoil? Like, is that engineering-wise, is that going to hold, and is that sturdy enough? And do you have a picture of what this wall is going to look like? Because I imagine your neighbors on the other side are going to see it, right? So like a fence. And have you shown a picture of this to your neighbors?
So we have a detail of how it would be constructed. So 4 feet and under typically won't require any kind of geogrid. The blocks are 12 to 18 inches wide, 8 to 12. They have a decorative front on them. So what you do is you stack them and you glue them together, and then you back.
Are they masoned? Are they, you say you glue
They're
them?
concrete blocks.
They're concrete. And are they just stacked? They're not, you don't cement them together? Or you
Every
just lay them?
manufacturer has
You dry lay them together?
Some you put actually glue together. The bottom ones may have a raised ridge, and the top one will sit on that.
Okay.
From experience, they are extremely heavy. Concrete's extremely heavy, and these blocks are heavy. So they actually will sit on top of each other. There'll be, again, different blocks. I'm not sure which one the applicants bought. They may have a ridge in the middle that the top one then has an indent, and when they sit on it to prevent sliding. Other ones are supplemented with epoxy glue to hold them together.
So pressure from the dirt and water would not push it forward?
Correct.
Okay.
If you drive around the neighborhood, these are very residential landscape type walls that we're proposing.
Okay.
Dowers, do you have any concerns on those points?
No, I've seen these to heights that I would not recommend, but I've seen these in other applications that are staggering. It's fairly standard. They're really all over the place.
Okay.
And they have different textures, different colors, and.
Yeah, I think I've seen them too.
Right, and as Kathy mentioned, they have ridges in them that are designed to interlock, and that's what they call them, actually interlocking blocks, and then, or keystone, and then they sometimes are connected with an epoxy or some type of a glue, and then they also sometimes have a bar that extends between them to further stabilize them. But it's fairly standard. There isn't, and as the detail shows, it really isn't too much of a foundation requirement. It's just a stabilized area that's level, that's gravel, and allows there's some gravel behind the wall for some drainage, and as Kathy said, they're gonna have weep holes, that'll have continuous drainage around it, which is not gonna be much, because above, the drainage is all gonna be graded to that existing, to a new lawn inlet that's gonna extend down to the existing stormwater system.
I understand that. So all of the drainage from the applicant's property will be taken care of. But are we now creating another drainage problem where water from the other properties will come to the bottom of this?
Not that I could see when I was out at the site.
Okay.
It seems like that seems to be a low area. And that's why there's a drain on that property. And with the new area that they're creating, that drain will be extended up to capture that same surface area.
Okay, but you're not creating another new lower area? Okay.
Can I try rephrasing that? Just sort of looking at the neighbor to the right as you're facing the house. Does some of the water from that neighbor currently drain in the corner of your yard? So that by putting this fence and raising it, you're preventing water from the next door neighbor from coming into this drain? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, that's right.
So all of the areas, our property and the property to the right, flow to the rear. This is a forced low point on this property, so they're gonna continue flowing to the rear. We do have a spot shot right on the back right corner. We're not raising the grade anywhere along the side. We're just raising the grade on our property, so theirs will still naturally drain towards the rear.
Okay.
Does this application call out for drainage, the retention of drainage jurisdiction?
Probably would be a good idea.
So, in some cases, as you may have seen for this board, potentially other boards, we ask that we retain drainage jurisdiction for 2 years, so in the event that the universe conspires against you and this particular construction, we find ourselves in an adverse situation, that it returns back to the board, and we would work with you to alleviate, whatever next steps are necessary. What's acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. Any other questions from members of the board? And I'll offer any questions, sir, if you'd like to ask a question, just come up here to the dais, up to the podium, right? We'll swear them in for questions too. No, swear them in for testimony.
Just name? Please state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address.
Raymond Byer, B as in boy, E-I-E-R, 88 Tanglewood Drive.
You're welcome.
The last part of the conversation, I think, addressed that our concern is the implications on drainage. So our backyard abuts against the applicant's.
Mr. Byer, sorry, just mind pausing for a second? If you're gonna provide testimony, we're just gonna swear you in. Just, it's a formality, so.
Oh, okay.
That's okay, otherwise, how it works is we do questions, and then we swear you in.
Sure.
Let's just do it all at once. Would you mind swearing,
Sounds
Mr.
good.
Byer?
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm the testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you have already stated your name, you spelled your last name, and gave us your address, so tell the board what you want to tell the board.
Testimony, questions, you go for it.
So, and I spoke with the applicant earlier today, so our house is, their house is at the top of the hill, our backyard's a butt. We're halfway down the hill as you continue down that hill that has tanglewood on the part of the hill. So it's a steep hill. So we've lived there for 26 years, and we've dealt with a lot of stormwater that wants to collect as it goes down the hill. So our concern is the implications of this project on stormwater drain. And I'm not an engineer, and so it's hard to know, it's hard for me to appreciate what the implications will be, and so we have engineers here and expertise. So that's my fundamental question. And
So maybe to return that back to the applicant and her witness, will these proposed changes offer any negative impact in terms of drainage or stormwater to the property? Is that anticipated? Will it make it better? Will there be no change?
There will be no negative impact. We're not putting any impervious, we're not increasing the runoff. I believe that it will improve what's flowing overland from our property through our back neighbor towards your house, because we're actually going to do a true grading plan so that it'll be done efficiently and put into the storm drain more efficiently than what's out there now.
I appreciate that. What's a true grading plan? What does that mean?
So right now, I would have to imagine that the neighborhood was built, and then they came through and said there was some drainage problems, and the city got together and said, hey, why don't we put a drain here, it should work. What we're doing is having proper grades on the applicant's property to direct the water from their backyard into that system. So right now, some may go off to the left, some may go off to the right, some may make it to the inlet. This is all gonna drain towards our new wall and have a swale on top of the wall to bring it to that inlet.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then, just before you leave here, the point on the drainage jurisdiction, if you find, after this is complete, that it's not working, call Chris Nicola, and we'll talk a little bit.
Chris, I hope I don't have to call you, and I anticipate I won't have to.
I don't think we've had an instance where we've had to, but, if you're the first, we'll take care of it.
But I think most importantly, and it seems like you have a good rapport here,
Yeah.
as your project progresses, if you can keep your neighbors up to date, and again, if you have any questions during it,
Got
speak
it.
to your neighbors first, and hopefully this will all get resolved.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. Do you have right now in your house, I know you've only been there for a year, do you have a lot of water in the backyard?
No, we actually don't yet.
Okay.
Which is good. Fingers crossed, yeah.
Okay. Well, there's one more gentleman back there. Do you know him?
I do not know.
Are you here for this application, sir? Okay, all right, fair enough. Easy enough. Okay. Then we've addressed the one question from a member of the interested public. I'll offer one more opportunity for questions from the board.
I have a question.
Please,
I
Mr.
mean,
Malone.
do we have an approved drainage plan here? Storm drainage plan for this? I see the grading plan. I'm not sure if there is a storm drainage plan approved by you or by the city.
They will submit a grading permit with the city that will have any requirements that they have for drainage.
Could we add as a condition a storm management plan for the drainage?
You don't think one's required at this point?
Well, the stormwater management plan is generally done for a larger development. There's no seepage pit involved. They're tying into an existing stormwater system underneath. There really isn't any need to have a formal plan because there's nothing really to maintain because the pipe, they're gonna have a vertical pipe that they'll have to.
There's an easement and there's a retaining wall.
Right.
That worries me.
Right, so the easement, well, the retaining wall is the onus is on the applicant to maintain that retaining wall, and it's gotta be, obviously gotta be constructed to the manufacturer's specifications and approved by the city when they go out and do the final as-built. As the applicant, I suggested the applicant videotape the pipe ahead of time, that'll give them some protection prior to the construction, and then after videotaping it to give them some protection after the fact. But they will provide a grading plan, submit a grading plan to the city that the city will approve, that will show all the drainage going to where it's supposed to go down to that inlet. So I don't think anything more formal than that is necessary.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Malone. Okay. Anything you'd like to say in closing for the application?
No,
No
thank you
pressure?
for your time.
Fine. Great, thank you. Mr. Byer, was there anything you wanted to say in closing, or you're good? All right, thank you very much. You're welcome. All right, so the conditions that I have noted here for the application is acceptance of the engineer's letter, including televising the lines before and after. We'll get the language right, but a staging plan in conjunction with Mr. Linson to minimize any potential negative impact on this one tree's root structure, and then retention of drainage jurisdiction for the board for a period of 2 years. Okay, cool. Who would like to begin deliberations? Catherine's the last one. This is her last case, so make it count.
I am in favor of this application. I think it's a relatively modest improvement on the property. I do think, though, there's a lot of value in doing a true grading plan, having the grade, going to the drain. I appreciate the fact that you did have the line checked for the easement ahead of time. What Mr. Dower said about possibly getting it televised before you do the work is probably a good idea for your own benefit. I understand that you have 2 young babies, it sounds like, so good luck with that.
Been there, done
Maybe not as close as yours, but, and I also understand the need to have some, like, real outdoor space that you can use. I appreciate your willingness to work with the board with respect to the tree issue as well. I know that is important. So for all of those reasons, I am in favor of this.
Excellent. All right, who would like to build on what Ms. Schwartzstein offered? Anything? Took it all off the table? Schwartzstein, if she was hanging around, I'd put her up for chair next year. Too bad.
That's why she's getting off.
That's right, she's running. No, I think to build on what Ms. Schwartzstein said is certainly improvement to the usability is something that will linger on the property and benefit, I think, the neighborhood and broader community. Addressing stormwater issues in Summit is just a perennial issue for every owner here, and appreciate the diligence that you've taken to hire a qualified professional, to go jump through all the hoops of the engineering department to do this and do this right. And then true to the volume of the testimony and deliberation tonight, to show special sensitivity to Summit's tree canopy and the preservation of these members of our community. So for those reasons, I too could approve the application. Do we have a motion to approve the application with the conditions as noted?
Motion to approve.
All right, Catherine.
Second.
Diana, all right. Chris, you give us a roll call?
Sure, Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Mr. Mullen?
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
And Chairman Spur.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, good luck, thank you, thanks for your patience tonight, too. I appreciate that. All right, we have a couple of resolutions and minutes for approval.
Yeah, and the 22 calendar as well, so we could start with the
Blow
calendar.
right back to that, sorry, Chris.
So, the only things we changed were the 23 dates on the bottom that were a day or two off. I think I was looking at the wrong year. But, other than that, I also added the August 15th, if necessary note in we're gonna try to
Yeah,
do what the
sure.
planning board does and not have that meeting. So,
We'll try.
we're only scheduled out to April right now, so we're getting there. So, it's good to plan ahead for
Did
this.
any of those dates, I tried to check the school calendars, I tried to check all kinds of different angles at the dates. If anything jumps out here to anyone, not that we can't amend it moving forward, but it'd be nice to address that now. Was there anything that caught anyone's eyes? I can give you a minute to skim it if you'd like. But it's mostly Mondays and Wednesdays, I think, right, Chris?
Well, there's a Thursday.
A couple of Thursday thrown in there for good measure.
Yeah. Bigger.
We'll show them. I know, right?
That's why you're leaving. 3 days?
Okay, so I think with that, Chris, you want a roll call?
Yeah, we can do a voice vote after for this, but we do need a motion in
All
a
right,
second.
so we need a motion and a second to approve the proposed 2022 and partial 2023 meeting schedule.
Move to approve.
Claire, a second?
Second.
Liz, a second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
Seeing none.
Don't do that in January. The board may change drastically.
We already catched the old year, so all this January, February dates are already adopted in the prior year. So, but, anywho.
All right, resolutions for memorialization. We have 6 Hickory Road, 10 Edison Drive, and then we have a peculiar resolution we'll talk about.
Yeah,
after this.
so 6 Hickory Road is first, application ZB 21-2086. Our eligible voting members are Chairman Spur, Mr. Steiner, Ms. Schwartzstein, Mr. Malay, and Ms. Toth. Do we have a motion for that? All right, Mr. Steiner moves. Do we have a second?
Second.
And second to Ms. Toth. All right, Chairman Spur,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
and Ms. Toth.
Yes.
All right, second is 10 Edison Drive, application ZB 21-2087. Our eligible voting members are Chairman Spur, Mr. Steiner, Ms. Schwartzstein, Mr. Malay, Ms. Toth, and Ms. Sager. And we need a motion for that.
So,
Oh, motion to approve.
All right, I think Diana got the motion. We'll give Catherine the second for the last one. All right, Chairman Spur,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner, Ms. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
and Ms. Sager.
Yes.
All right.
And-
Chris, explain to us what the heck this resolution amending zoning board attorney contract is for anyone that didn't get to skim the language of the actual resolution.
So, due to we've essentially doubled our caseload for the year, so we've averaged around 40-something, and we're about at 80. So, what I learned is that all the money that gets posted in escrow that gets billed against time that, Andy prepares resolutions for, that all gets counted as part of the contract in addition to his meeting attendance. So, we've never run into this thing where we've been in this many applications. So, we've gone over slightly. 10,000 is more of a generous in case we don't want to have to do this twice. I don't think we'll eclipse that 10,000 or even come too close to it, but that is effectively the rationale as to why the amendment would be needed.
This is allowing us, if needed, to spend up to that threshold. We are not cutting Andy a check for $10,000.
Correct.
Right, okay, good. Sorry, Andy. Does everyone kind of follow procedurally what's going on here?
And I would note that the QPA has reviewed the resolution prior to the distribution to you guys, so, and she was okay with the contents at this point.
Claire, do you have a concern or a question?
No, I was
Eyebrows
just,
are fierce.
it was just, Mr. Nicola kind of whipped through the escrow, and I'd like that unpacked just a little for my own understanding.
Right, so every applicant so typically your single-family homeowners post $800 in escrow accounts that are managed by the city. That covers the expenses from Mr. Doerr's time, the time for drafting the resolution, John Linson for his reviews, so all that gets pooled in. So Andy's time specifically, in addition to the general meeting attendance that the firm gets, they also charge for the resolution, which gets billed to that escrow, not the meeting attendance itself.
Okay.
So, due to the large volume of what we've had, that's where we've gotten close to that not to exceed amount. And that's why we're proactively, before the end of the year, doing this, so we don't get it into the point of the new year where we run out of money to pay them.
And just shut down operations.
But you're not allocating city money, you're allocating escrow dollars.
It would be in both accounts, so the meeting attendance, it gets split. So, we're only using what we need out of this additional $10,000, as Steve pointed out. We're not saying, here's $10,000, use it all up.
But I think the $10,000 is money that is partially homeowners hosted money and city money.
Well, it's really Andy's time against the resolution. So if applicants have an excess in their escrow at the end of the process, they get refunded that money.
Okay.
And sometimes they owe money after the process. It really depends on the nature of each application. So it's not so much that the QPA tracks everything as just dollar amounts. So every time the PO goes in, that money, that usually it's $150 per resolution, depending on the amount of time. So all those 150s over the course of the time, that's what the QPA tracks. That, in combination with the general meeting attendance, is all combined into one pot, basically. And that is why we're almost over that 35 initially.
Okay.
So
it's a reflection of the substantial increase in volume of the cases we heard. I think, Chris, you and I were talking about how the planning board ran up against this issue, but for a different reason.
Yeah, they
with
had a
respect to
particular.
Primrose School application, which some neighbors, you know.
No, our meetings, so we know what that dollar number is today for 2022. We know exactly how many meetings there are, because it's a fee per meeting.
Right, that's not so much,
So
it's more
not
the,
the meetings that we're talking about, which is city money. It's and we're, what are we doing? We're embargoing the funds so that the money is allocated, not necessarily sourcing it.
There's some budding QPAs in our
love
midst
of
here, Chris.
municipal finance law.
Right. Not a bunch of nerds. All
this
right,
is why our
anyway.
QPA looked at everything beforehand.
Okay, so with that, we need
Okay.
I'm assuming there's no amendments to it, a motion and a second, and then Chris, you want a roll call on this?
Yes, we should definitely do a roll call
So
for
we have
this.
Okay. Second.
Joe, and then Claire.
Okay, so, Chairman Spur,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Mr. Malay, Ms. Toth,
Yes.
and Ms. Sager.
Yes.
All right, so that passes as well, and we've got a set of minutes from November 15th, 21 to approve. So would somebody like to move those?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. All right.
And then we wanted to offer 3 quick notes. For those that will still be serving on the board, there's a potential for a February 16th special meeting. Thank you for your service.
All right, yeah, I'll give you the quick, the abridged version, so.
I resign.
All right, we're-
Yes, I got it.
I'm with you. Let's resign to the office.
So this is from our zoning board, as you might have heard me say before, is kind of scheduled out through March already for pending applications. So, and that's with about 4 on a night. So, rather than put 6 on a night, I think
I know, right?
we have a substantial site plan coming in that will need its own night. Or 2.
Oh, no.
But- Yeah, or 3. Well, hopefully not, but we'll see.
But as I think we saw tonight, we can do 4 residential cases in an evening, but with the substantial site, and we're talking about a 50-plus unit apartment building, so it's...
Where? Yeah, where do you want to put that?
I don't want to say too much, but it is...
Details to follow, yeah, so that scale of an application with the depth of testimony you would expect just requires at least a meeting, potentially two, so.
Well, the real implications come from if we schedule that on with other residential cases, it will basically eat up the entire agenda, and we didn't want to push the residential cases further into April.
Right, right.
Yeah.
They're already looking at me like I got 12 heads when I tell them I'll see you in April. So
So we haven't confirmed it back to the applicants, check your calendars, let's see if we can work, if we need to nudge it, we can nudge it, but.
February 16th was the original proposed date.
Wednesday, I believe, right?
Yeah, it falls in between both of our February meetings, so that was kind of the rationale for picking that date. You guys can email me offline just so we can start tracking if we have quorum or not. These types of meetings are good to attend because then you're not stuck reading the transcript afterwards, which everyone has that right of passage, I suppose, but yeah.
Okay. So keep that in your mind. Secondarily, thank you, Catherine, and everyone else here that may be completing their term of service on the board. We greatly appreciate not just the city, but you as your fellow board members for asking tough questions and chuckling along with us where we can find moments of levity. So thank you, Catherine. And then finally, happy holidays to everyone. So with that, we'll see you in January.